I always find this a difficult one to compare generations. You know, I didn't get to see all the previous generations. Of course, you have, you know, people even that I've got to know since I started playing handball. You had, you know, or even names like Jimmy Jacobs and Vic Hershkowitz, and then you had Nadia Alvarado Sr., of course, holds the all-time record. Well, Paul Brady has equaled that. Dave Chapman, of course, you know, so many great players, but I suppose just because I've actually been in the court with him and seen him play and how dominant he was for so long on both sides of this ocean, I think I would go for Paul Brady.
Probably Fiona Shannon. I think she has like the credentials, like with her World Championship wins and All-Ireland titles. And she was really dominant for a long number of years. So those are the kind of records that I am striving towards.
Paul Brady is hands down the best handball player because he was the most consistent, the most ruthless. He has the titles to go along with it. Now people might argue that he doesn't have the most national titles, but he ties for the most national titles and he has all the records for everything else. And you know, he's not only beaten players in tournaments in every game of a tournament, but he's demolished players in every game of a tournament. And he did so for a remarkable length of time. Whereas others, you know, like David Chapman, you know, it's all up for debate. But David played, retired, because there was no one to challenge him. But then when he came back, you know, Paul definitely was on the upper hand of wins and losses. Not saying that David didn't beat him here and there, but, you know, without a doubt, if you're saying you're playing 20 matches, you know, Paul is definitely on top. So that's a biased opinion, obviously, because, you know, I'm watching his era, and I never got to see the other person that would be usually up for debate is Nadia Alvarado Sr. But even so, I think maybe if Nadia Alvarado Sr. was playing in Paul Brady's time, maybe. But if you were to compare the two in terms of the ability and the sheer strength, I would think, you know, Paul would definitely win 10 times out of 10. You know, because sports moves on. You know, people just generally get better, and you see that in every sport across the board. You know, so without a doubt, Paul Brady.
I would say that there's a few people who would stand out, like growing up, Fiona Shannon was always someone that I looked up to. And then obviously in recent years, like Aisling Riley has been very successful, and at the moment Katrina is like dominating. Yeah, but it's hard to say who's the best of all time.
I'd say, you know, most people go with their generations, you know, but I think Brady to me was I don't know, I think he was pretty unstoppable, you know, from seeing some of the videos of the older guys and stuff. I played Dave Chapman, you know, he was also amazing. But Brady, when he was at the top of his game, seemed like he was just unbeatable. He was beating everybody at nationals, you know, in single digits and stuff. He's just so quick, and everything was kind of like perfected. So I'd say Brady.
I know there's so many greats, but there's also a player that I just saw at the Women's Classic that just was really inspiring, and that's Jennifer Schmidt. She, at her age, and she was just playing incredible. Like, she was playing at the level of like some of us, you know, younger women, and I think that was just really inspiring to see, because, you know, handball is a lifetime sport, but for women you don't see that happening for, you know, especially at that age. So it was just incredible to see her still playing and playing at that level.
I want to say Nati, but I didn't really see him play too much, but it's kind of hard to not pick Paul Brady. I have seen Paul Brady in person, and just watching him courtside, it's just another level. He really like elevated the game of handball in that stretch that he had. I mean, he was like a 5-time world champion, 11-time national champion. It's hard to not say Paul Brady.
I mean, Katrina's amazing. And then, I mean, Tracy Davis, Megan Michalos. Like, I mean, Priscilla Shoemate won 3-wall, 4-wall, and 1-wall. There's a lot of big ball players that I really like. Brenda Perez. I mean, I like to put myself up there too. It's hard to say because there's just so many different codes. So, and I think it depends on how, like, all these women, like what your goals are. And I feel like handball is such a like there's so much variety there that depending on how you see it, if it's like most wins of all time, and you're like your goal is like I'm gonna like Katrina or Tracy, where they're like I'm taking as many national titles or world titles or pro stop titles as I can, and they're up there and they're like 11 in a row or 10 in a row or whatever it was, versus like my goal is more like just doing the crossover thing. Like I want to be able to be like overall the best well-rounded player. And like you just got some of these like New York girls like Jenny Q and the twins that are like amazing. So it's really hard for me to pick one. I'd say mentally the person that I've loved to watch the most was Brenda Perez. But I haven't really gotten to see like everybody more on the four-wheel side because I'm like just coming up more and more into it. So Brenda, I would still say, is my favorite, greatest player of all time to watch and see and play.
That's a very hard one to say because I don't want to disrespect any previous generation. I didn't have a chance to watch Jimmy Jacobs or Vic Hershkowitz or Paul Brady, or I'm sorry, Paul Haber, or to some degree Nadia Alvarado Sr. I didn't really see him. So I've really just seen, starting probably with Dave Chapman when he was the dominant player of the 90s. And then, into 2000s it was Paul Brady, and then since then has been Killian, and I'd say Martin is now kind of knocking on the door as being the top player. He's won the Nationals, which was also the World Championships, and now he's #1 on the tour. So, someone probably in that list, and maybe I'm forgetting someone, but as far as I know, of the guys I've seen, it's definitely Chapman, Brady, Killian, with Martin now kind of knocking on the door.
I'd have to go with Paul Brady. I love Dave Chapman. Two different types of skill sets, but Paul Brady is just an athlete, just unbelievable.
Probably Brady. Yeah, I think the ones in contingency or that are competing would be Brady, Brady, Killian, and maybe Chapman. But I think Brady was just a machine when he was at his prime. It was amazing.
I could sit and talk about that for a long time. It's hard to say when I didn't really get the chance to watch like prime Chapman or prime Alvarado. I saw a little bit of prime Brady, and obviously I've seen prime Killian. I don't know. I think when Killian's on, it's hard to do anything against him. So I would probably say him or Brady, but that's with the asterisk of not ever seeing prime Chapman or Alvarado play.